If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button as well as the bell to be notified of future videos. Thank you.
Hello Internet, we are back and I'm excited. We've got General Jock here again. I believe today we're going to talk about his time as the officer commanding of 5SAI, 5 South African Infantry Battalion. And this is important to me because I've always wondered how do you take a guy from a school, a matriculate who thinks the world of himself and with reason why not, and some are long-haired, pakkare, others are skinny, some are overweight, and they all arrive at your command and you have to make soldiers of them. And when I looked at the comments in the first videos, 5SAI is actually where you are remembered quite well, sir. They talk about you really in a nice, respectful way. We did answer the story about the promises. We answered that in the questions and answers. The General is smiling here at the back. But before we start, sir, I need to ask you, somebody made a comment about some band called Jock, Harris and Athletic Support or something. Can you tell me, is that true or a rumor or what happened there?
Oh, what a start to this conversation. Yeah, that was very many years later when I do my last episode quiz. Excuse me, I'll actually send you a photo of that band. There's very recognizable people that played in that band. It was a rock band. And somebody came up with a name that it's Jock and the Athletic Supports. And we played in a couple of places, here in EP Command and out at Dankie and so on. But I'll tell you more about that in my last episode with a photo.
Well, we're grateful to hear that, sir. So now let us get to 5SAI, which I think is going to be fascinating.
Thank you, Chris. I must say, you're really pushing me to my limits here now. Normally it's, 3:30. Normally, the older gentlemen are having a bit of a siesta, but I'll catch up on that later on. Chris, once again, thanks for the conversations I'm having with you. It's enlightening and it's therapeutic, really. It's forcing me to get down and make sure that my memoirs are finished, but enough of that. Just by the way, what I'm going to be saying now is actually just scratching the top of the iceberg. I was at 5SAI for 6 years. So many things happened, so many people we met, so many stories to retell, which I think we will reserve for reunions and that sort of a thing. So, without making it boring, I'm just going to have to run across the top of the iceberg and then put a little bit more on the writing later on. I've sent you photos, Chris. I've got hundreds of photos, literally hundreds of photos. I remember when I left 5SAI in 86, they asked me what would I like, what present would I like. So I said, I just like a photo album with photos in. And they gave me a massive, I'm not exaggerating, a thick one, plus extra photos, because we took a lot of photos during those 6 years through the media center, which I'm going to talk about just now. So if anybody's interested in photos of anything, they can contact me through you, and I can see if I can give them photos that can bring back good memories. Of course, in October 1980, I was at the infantry school, as you know, and I was called on orders and told that I had been appointed the officer commanding a 5 South African Infantry Battalion in Ladysmith, Natal. And of course, there's mixed emotions when something like that happens. I'm 34 years old. I've got about 15 years service. And now all of a sudden, the buck is going to stop with me, because I've been used to now the past 15 years that I've got an officer commanding. who trains me, who reprimands me, who praises me. I had the warrant officers and other senior officers that help you grow up in your career. My officer commanding had to take full responsibility for everything that happened in that unit, and he had to answer to authorities. He had to have answers about what's happening in A, B, C, or D. And now all of a sudden, first of all, it's with pride. This is nice. Somebody thinks I could do this. And then secondly, you start thinking to yourself, yo, here comes the trepidations. All of a sudden, I'm the officer commanding. The buck stops with me. I must be the responsible one for every single thing in that unit. And I've got to be accountable. Now, of course, nowadays, accountability has got another sort of a connotation to it, or the lack thereof. So that trepidation grew a little bit before I left for 5SAI. And at some stages, I used to wake up at night in sheer terror. I'm not going to go command national servicemen and be responsible for their safety and their training and everything else that goes with it. But you young, I wouldn't do it now. I'm too old for that now. I wouldn't have the guts for that now, I'll be quite honest. But that's how the good Lord works. He gives it to the people that are young enough to do it. I'd never be able to bring up children now either. I'll just spoil the grandchildren. And as hulle nie lelik raak, ek gee dit terug vir ma en pa. I couldn't do it then. So Ina and I and the 3 children and Annelien, the Cocker Spaniel, off we go. Hier agterna kom die Stadtefordstrok and off we go to Ladysmith. When I arrived there, very, very well received by my predecessor, then still Commandant Toby van Skalkwyk and his wife Alta, and the RSM Ben Oosthuizen. We stayed in the VIP flats until the handing and taking over was completed. And Toby still told me too, exactly what I've told you now. That's the other kettle of fish this way, mate. You got to answer for everything. And it was now up to 2 years national service. I remember national service started for 3 months, and then it was 9 months, and then it was 12 months, and then it was 18 months for a short period, and now it's up to 2 years, 24 months. So in the 80s, national service was a very, very serious business. But there I was, ready to go. Familie in die hond in die kar, daar gaat ons. I was appointed as the 11th and the 12th commander of 5SAI. You'll see it on the officer commanding board there. For the first 3 years, I was a commandant, and then 5SAI's name changed and its aim changed for the last 3 years, and that was a colonel's post. So I was 11 and 12 on the board. The reason for that is that, into the middle 80s, there were a lot of national servicemen being trained. The first 3 years was 2 intakes, January and July. And then when we became 5th South African Infantry Training Unit, that was the new name in my second term. That was just July intakes in 5SAI's case, where you were training 1,800, 2,200 per intake national service. I tried to work it out the other day. In the 6 years that I was there, it must have been 9,000 national servicemen that passed through 5SAI. And you must remember the other size, 1 to 7 or 1 to 8 rather. Before you got 9 up to 15, we're training national servicemen at almost the same rate. So it was serious business in the 80s. Just by the way, I arrived in Ladysmith, and during the handing and taking over, which was done very professionally, Toby took me through every single thing. Here's the strengths, here's the weaknesses, here's where I think we must make changes, and off we went. in a beautiful little town. Ladysmith has got such a wonderful military history. If you ever have the chance and you pass through there, those that haven't, just stop there and have a look at their military museum. Daar langs die stadsaal. Wonderful place. 5SAI, of course, I was told, the history tells you, it was obviously there, not 5SAI, but the military base was there during the siege of Ladysmith. And it was then known as Tin Town, corrugated tin. And King's Post, just opposite the main entrance to 5SAI, played a very, integral part in the siege of Ladysmith and the relief of Ladysmith thereafter. But fascinating history. Now, of course, I'm stuck with a problem again here now. Time-wise, there's no ways that I can go through every single person that served. I'm talking about my staff members. Every single person by name. That would take us the whole day. If I also say, I remember this guy and I remember that guy, then it'll be unethical because somebody else is going to say, oh, jy kan my nie eens onthou nie, and I served with you for 5 years. So I don't want to take that chance. I said that when I spoke about the infantry school as well. However, I'm going to mention names of my executive, my second in command, RSM, chaplains, and people should remember, or I'm sure will remember some of those names. My company commanders, my section heads, the military police and their regimental police, the catering services. I'd love to mention all their names. But I'm going to when I do it on paper, but that's for later on. So I apologize if I haven't mentioned your name. But suffice to say, when I arrived there, the 2IC, you've got photos of this. The 2IC was Major Tini Spitz and his family. My regimental sergeant major was Sergeant Major Ben Oosthuizen. He was there for the full 6 years. My chaplain was Dominee Kobus van Sail. And my adjutant that I appointed, the first one, was Captain Hein Visser. That I can remember. The 2ICs that followed Tini were guys like Vic Victor, JP Snyman, shame who we buried just this year, Jeff Patterson, and Anton Kritzinger. Those are the names of the 2ICs that I had over those 6 years. The RSM, as I said, was there for the full 6 years. The chaplain was replaced, Dominee Kobus van Sail. Dit was die vervang nie wys verplaas en 'n Dominee Smit het in sy plek ingekom. So those were the names I'm going to mention about the executive side of the unit. I don't know if I've sent you the photo, but I will if I see it's not on there. I do have a photo of the whole unit in 1983. I'm going to send you that one, sitting on the pavilion. And if you go in and you make it bigger, then you can see there's all the people, the majority of them, that served with me for those 6 years. Now, just like any unit, I used to discuss this with my colleagues, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 size. When we used to get together at the infantry school every year or every second year, all the infantry unit commanders would also be there with their RSMs, and we would discuss matters infantry, lessons learned, exchanging ideas with each other, and so on. So I'm not just talking in vacuum here now. The things that I'm going to be talking about here was taking place in all the infantry units, obviously just with a different twist to it, depending on a lot of things. One of them being the abilities of your staff members. And I've said to a lot of people when I arrived at 5SAI and I saw the abilities of the staff members that were there, it was like winning a lotto. You have to look at what I've got here. I'm very grateful for that. Some of my colleagues said, "Jong, ek sukkel 'n bietjie hier en ek sukkel 'n bietjie daar met sekere mense," but I was blessed from the word go. Thank heavens for that. Now, they also tell you that infantry or a unit, a military unit, doesn't have to be infantry, forms a very integral part of the community, of the town or the city that you live in. In our case, 5SAI doesn't just sit there one side on the outskirts of Ladysmith and nobody knows about it. Everybody knows about it. Can you imagine what a unit like 5SAI economically does for that of a little town like Ladysmith? Then you become very attached to each other for obvious reasons. So you've got to keep communication open, and you've got to support each other, which was amazing. I must be quite honest with you. I remember arriving there, and interestingly, Ladysmith's coat of arms at the bottom has got progresses, and our badge has got Avante, and it means exactly the same thing. And that's actually a nice way of showing how the unit and the civilian population worked together as one. I remember arriving there, and the town clerk was Peter Herter. He was the town clerk there for the entire 6 years that I was there. It was a permanent post. Slegs genoeg, ek en Pieter het gedog ons is miskien familie, want my ouma aan my ma se kant was 'n Herter wat van Somerset Oos-Kaap gekom het hier in die Oos-Kaap. En Pieter se mense se Herters kom ook van Somerset Oos-Kaap. And we also used to have a dop about that, say, yeah, ek en jy seker maar familie, joh. The first mayor that I got there was Mr. Corney Botha, and thereafter it was David Reineke, and Ben Himan was so I had 3 mayors, if I can remember, not necessarily in that sequence. I can't remember so long time ago. But it was Corney Botha, David Reineke, Ben Himan. There's a little story quickly. Oh, by the way, when I arrived there, 5SAI had already received the freedom for the entry of the borough of Ladysmith. Borough, English word for municipality. So it meant that Ladysmith could do certain things if you got the freedom. It didn't mean you could go to check the ShopRite and get the afslag. That's not the freedom I'm talking about. The history books will tell you, this is a British tradition, that if a town gives a unit freedom of entry, then it means that you are allowed to march through the streets of the borough of Ladysmith with drums beating, colors flying, and bayonets fixed. You don't normally just fix a bayonet anywhere, but you're allowed to do it when you march through the streets. And after our planning, that was going to happen again. We did it every year for 6 years. We used to march through the streets of Ladysmith, making use of our freedom of entry. The one quick story before I leave the municipality. I remember arriving there within a week. I was invited to meet the municipal officials, and they welcomed me there at the Royal Hotel at a little place called Swainson's. I'll never forget that. Lekker kos gegee. And I reported there at about 1 o'clock for lunch. And you know how those things go. It was an extended lunch. We only left there at about 5 o'clock. And I remember saying to them, listen, I'm parked outside here on a parking meter. Moenie worry nie, jy praat met die regte ouens. And I got to my car at 5 o'clock. And there was a parking ticket on it. Los ek maar die parking ticket, ry terug. The next morning, obviously the traffic chief had checked all these ticket books and he said, maar hier het Harris een gekry. And he actually came out, the traffic chief himself, I can't remember his name, came out to apologize to me in my office that one of his officers had given me a parking fine. So it was actually a very good start to an amazing relationship. Then Toby van Skalkwyk and his family left for Potchefstroom. He was promoted to colonel, and he became the officer commanding of 82 Mech Brigade, die Ratelmanne in Potchefstroom. That was after a great handing and taking over. We used to go to a place called, well, varying, but that specific year, we went to a little place outside Port Elizabeth, outside Ladysmith, very historical as well, called Spioenkop. It's a little, at Spioenkop Dam, just below the famous Spioenkop itself. And there we got together and we did the planning on how do we tackle this year. I think we must have gone there in the 6 years for 4 years anyway. Because Spioenkop used to be nice. It's got its own little chalets and you can lekker span bou and al daai goeders. So we got along and for about almost 3-4 days, there it was. We've now planned how we want to do this. Taking Toby's handing and taking over documents, getting inputs from everybody and saying, all right, this is how, under my command, we are going to handle 5SAI, 1981. It happened the same every year. Now, I must say, one of the things we did, which helps this research after 40 years, is we brought out, as part of communication, we brought out a supplement to the Ladysmith Gazette. It was run by Barry Manship. And that Gazette used to come out once a week. It was a weekly supplement in Ladysmith. And he said, man, free of charge, you could get your little media center and have them get us a little supplement, the same size as the newspaper. And that went into the Ladysmith Gazette. I was there for 6 years and we used to bring out about 3, sometimes 4 of those supplements per year. So I've got about copies of about 20 of those supplements here, which does help because I can now go into those supplements and see what the hell I was saying to not only my troops or their parents or loved ones, but also to the community of Ladysmith. And one of the things that came out in that Spioenkop planning session was, remember, we are now working with national servicemen. Without them, that's the lifeblood of the unit doesn't exist. But how do we look after them? Cut a long story short, I'm going to read you quickly here a piece that I called From Extension 1. That was my little piece in the supplement. I said, yeah, the aim of this particular column, as part of Insizwa, which was named after the award that you could get for doing a very strenuous, a lot of exercises. You could get a badge called the Insizwa on your uniform. Insizwa in Zulu means, if I don't have it wrong, strong young man. Insizwa. So the aim of Insizwa is to give me, as officer commanding, the opportunity to communicate personally with you as parents and wives of my men, as well as the community of Ladysmith. I must sincerely thank all those who have contributed to the birth of the supplement to the Ladysmith Gazette, and I am sure that it will serve its purpose as my unit's mouthpiece to those outside our perimeter. Ons hier by 5SAI gebruik die volgende 3 punte as ons riglyne ten opsigte van die benadering en hantering van ons nasionale dienspligtiges. We had 3 of them. Came out of that planning. Om sover dit vir ons moontlik is, te sorg vir die fisiologiese benodighede van ons nasionale dienspligtiges. Look after their physiological needs. Those that can remember, you got Maslow's theory rather. This is based on Maslow's theory. You know, at the bottom of the triangle is physiological needs, and then it builds up until you get to the top, which I think it was self-actualization. You can't be somebody trained to go and fight on the border if you haven't started at the bottom and somebody looks after your physiological needs. So ek het gesê, ons moet kyk na hulle fisiologiese benodighede. As voorbeeld noem ek die kwessie van goed voorbereide voedsel, aanvaarbare slaapkwartiere, genoeg tyd vir vrye tydsbesteding en dies meer, sport en so aan. Tweede punt wat ons gesê het is om u seun of eggenoot se menswaardigheid ten alle tye te respekteer. That was a difficult thing. In English, we had to respect your son or your loved one's human dignity. He's not an animal. You have to look after him properly. And then thirdly, we said, om ons NDP's harde, eerlike opleiding te gee, om sodoende hierdie eenheid se doel te bereik, naamlik om troepe op te lei om militêre gevegte te wen. Those were the three things. That was the three prongs that we had to look at as our guidance ahead at 5SAI. 5SAI further, I've informed my men of the three above-mentioned guidelines and have thereby committed myself to ensure that my instructors and officers abide by them. This all sounds very theoretical, but we have a saying at 5SAI, and that is, we walk the talk. Well, it's a little no. Meaning, obviously, that we intend to practice what we preach. We don't just talk it, you walk it. Ek wil 'n ernstige beroep rig aan al die naasbestaanders van my NDP's, dat sou dit onder die aandag kom, dat ons nie die bogenoemde punte nakom nie, die onmiddellik met my in aanraking moet kom. Net sê skriftelik, bla bla en so aan. And then I touch here on, there are various projects that are going to take place. By the way, this very first one came out deep into 1981. So a lot of the stuff that we had planned at Spioenkop was already being completed. And I'll get back to them later on. But that is what I and other unit commanders, specifically infantry in our case, that was what we had to look after. Now, it's not easy. We talk about menswaardigheid. You know, a lot of people forget that all of us were also national servicemen. A lot of us forget that, well, I wasn't called up, I volunteered, but the vast majority of national service were legally called up. So as officer commanding and as staff members of a unit like 5SAI, you had a massive responsibility. Their safety, their spiritual side, their training, their full-time utilization, their sport. Because if you didn't have that, you're not going to get to self-actualization at the top of Maslow's theory. I'm repeating myself, sorry. So yeah, that was the way. I remember I said to my staff members, besides in CISWA, that enabled us to communicate outside the perimeters, I want you all to communicate with each other inside the perimeters of 5SAI. I remember having what we called a klagtebusie. You know, it's a locked up little thing, post box. And if you as a national serviceman, if Jock Promises has made you certain promises here and it's not been kept, throw it in there. But you know what people are like? Hulle was te bang om data in te gooi, want nou gaan iemand ons sien. Dan gaan hulle sê, jy's 'n snitcher. So that didn't work all that well. Then I had a national service committee. Out of all the sections and the companies, I had one representative that came and saw me on the regular occasions where I'd said, right, no staff members here now. Tell me what is happening. What's your food like? What's your human dignity? Are people swearing it? Oh, swearing it would happen. I mean, this wasn't a Sunday school. But are people climbing into you and riding into your personality or whatever? And that's the way we communicated. And that's how a lot of things came to my attention. There was one that my staff members did not like. They get to sit there and watch this, those that do, and say, yeah, we didn't like that. I said, every now and again, it was once a month when I could, sometimes less, I want the whole company, a company, come here. All the staff members leave, only the national servicemen are here. And the only people that were with me was the adjutant and the chaplain and the RSM. And we said to them, now listen, if we ask you who's doing what wrong, you mustn't mention names in the beginning. Just say, the corporals are ABC. The staff sergeant is ABC, whatever. Then I'll go back to the staff members and tell them, ek het nie name nie, but watch out, this is complaints coming from the troops. Don't go and victimize them because they told me that. Because then I'm going to hear that again. Sorry, I'm laboring this, but that's how you handle national servicemen. Otherwise, you're not going to succeed in it. And then the rest of the rules was, the second time I go there, and ABC are still doing what they're doing, then I want the names. Not the first time, second, and then I go back and say, hey, X, hier maak jy wat ek vir jou gesê het. It used to work. It used to work, and we used to get nice communication with each other. Anyway, enough of that. Then in our planning came out the following. Let's have a look at the food side. I promised the parents here, I said, ons gaan kyk dat julle behoorlike kos kry. Now let's face it, the physical things that you went through as a national serviceman, you had to have good food, and you had to have nutritious food, and you had to have a lot of food. Anders kan jy dit nie maak. And I remember how we used to get the chefs together and say, right, I want to see what your recipes look like. Where's the carbohydrates together with the protein, together with the that's whatever. And I must say, the catering department in any army, I've always had great respect for. I might have said it somewhere before, but they were the only corps that were evaluated 3 times a day, every day, by everybody. But anyway, we used to go check them on a daily basis. We even got down to checking the raw products, the raw material that arrived. What does it look like here? What's the condition? And is it good vegetables? Is it good meat? If it didn't do that, then of course some of your contractors might be coining it and then sending you second grade stuff. We used to tune into that. I remember the mess. The National Service mess was a large building with rows of tables and a big open door on one side and an open door on the other side. And at 5SAI, when I arrived there, I discovered that there was about 16 motorbikes, 650cc Hondas. All my staff, all my company commanders, the adjutant, the RSM, we all had motorbikes. And we used to ride almost every meal, either myself or the company commanders, would ride right into the mess with your motorbike, then ride down the tables and to see if the salt cellars are full, to see if the pepper is there, to see if the butter is there, whatever. Then you ride out of the mess on the other side. But that's how serious we had to take it. Because if you just talk and you don't go look, and you don't go and see what's happening. I know I'm preaching to the converted now. It doesn't work. I remember one of my officers commanding used to wear a little piece of band over here, and he had letters on there. And the letters stood for, you can't do business sitting on your ass. You got to get out of your office of the yana and go and see what's happening. Go and see what's behind every door and what's up in every ceiling. That's how serious this job became. The troops used to have, I reckon, good food. There might have been off days, but in general, there was good food to eat at 5SAI. Then we had to look after the sleeping quarters. Now, 5SAI has got a history of, it was called Tin Town, remember? All those old sleeping quarters were cardboard tin. In Natal, in Ladysmith, where it could go to -5 degrees in the winter. When I arrived there, and that's the first photo that you will see that I've given you a quiz. It's a black and white photo of the entrance of 5SAI taken from King's Post. And I put that one up instead of a color one, because just to the right of the entrance is a big board got SS on it. And that SS wasn't something sinister. It stood for stocks and stocks. They were building contractors. Why I'm saying this is when I arrived there, stocks and stocks were already building 5 or 6 3-story, beautiful sleeping quarters. But we were still intense when I got there. They completed the building of those 6 beautiful sleeping quarters. It was 5 or 6, I think it was 6. They finished building in my first year. I can try to remember the names of them. Those buildings all got names. Platrand, Spioenkop, Vaalkrans, Elandslaagte, Colenso, Nicholson's Neck. If you listen to those names, the easiest way to give those beautiful buildings a name was to have a look at which battle during the Anglo-Boer War or the South African War, which battle was the closest geographically to that building. And that building got its name, Platrand, Colenso, Nicholson's Neck, so on. And then, of course, once we moved into those new buildings, you had to have inspections to make sure that they kept that way. Anders verval daai geboue baie vinnig. And just lastly on the buildings, when they were completed, we had in every one of them, let's take for instance Spioenkop, the Battle of Spioenkop and the whole history. Each little building or each building, a 3-story building, had a foyer, and in the foyer was a beautiful little story of how the Battle of Spioenkop took place and so on. All part of history and the legacy that you love so much, Chris. Right. Like I say, I could talk for hours, but I must make this a little bit shorter. Then, national servicemen, lifeblood of the unit, free time utilization. You can't just be soldiering all the time. Jy sal afgestop raak. Visitors Day, the most important day for a national serviceman. Want daar ry almal van oral af, from Durbs, from Bloemfontein, wherever ook al, on a Saturday to come and visit your loved ones. Now, I'm not trying to be funny now towards my predecessor, but he told me during handing and taking over, ek dink ons moet 'n bietjie meer doen as die ouers kom kuier. Because normally you'll arrive at the gate, the RP would say, yes sir, nee, ek wil vir Snoeks, I've come to visit Snoeks. And then he get onto a radio, Snoeks se pa's by die hek. And then Snoeks would come out and climb in and hello and a Tranendal, and then they go park under a tree somewhere and then you never see them again. It wasn't controlled, it wasn't looked after nicely. So we decided, right, we're going to build a family reception center. We got one of the old bungalows that was broken down, and we built a proper thing with all the troops' names on it and in which sleeping quarters they were. At each sleeping quarter, if it was your weekend for visitors, there would be duty personnel on. So if your folks arrived at the gate, they would be escorted through and told, there's the visitors' parking area, sir, and there you must go to that building there. And there they'd walk in, they would be welcomed, there would be copies of the Insizwa lying around there and so on. And I say, yeah, we'll Snoeks in. Then they get a hold of Snoeks on the radio, and Snoeks reports properly. He first gets inspected at the duty room to make sure that he's, jy weet, laat hy daarom sê, dassie reg is or whatever. And then he'd report to mommy or papi of a vroukie lief. Then they would have, they'd have options. They could go and park in the parking, or leave it in the parking area, bring their own meat with, and come and braai at, I think we built something like 18 braais. We also did die braai hoekie genoem. Gaan braai maar nou daar. If you didn't bring your meat with, we built a place called the Hamburger Hut. It looked like a wimpy. We built it to look like a wimpy. Money that all came from the troops, regimental fees. It wasn't state that built that. The troops' own money built that. And then you could go and sit there like a wimpy, or you could buy your braai pakkie, and jy gaan braai. The hamburger hut, by the way, we used to save money. We started a little farm called Ben's Supplies. It was named after the RSM, right down in the corner of the unit. And at Ben's Supplies, we had our little ponies. That was our mascot. Ek gaan hulle nou naam onthou. And we grew our own tomatoes, onions, blaarslaai, sulke goeders. It's all to save money. It was productive, it was busy. So the hamburger hut was there. We had proper ladies' toilets, upgraded, make them nice and pretty. From big, it's blobbietjies in. The swimming pool was updated. You could go and swim there with your family if you wanted to. The braais I told you about. We had instruction huts during training all over the unit. And at each instruction hut, we actually built a little braai area as well. So you could ride and down in the unit somewhere, go and sit there away from everybody else, nicely in the shade, and you could braai and do your thing. And I think that went down very well. Then, of course, we had a lot of other projects that was nearly ending towards the end of the first year already. We had a basketball court that we built, everything out of private funds, not the state. What was it? Basketball, volleyball, tennis courts we had built. The gardens in the front when you came into the unit, that we had ground ridden in that the department, or rather the municipality, gave us free of charge. We just had to go and fetch it. Ali and say, verpak jy dit altyd gaan haal. It took about 18 months. We had a beautiful garden in front of 5SAI. We built industrial braais. Can you imagine giving a braai for a company of 150 troops? Hoe moet daai braai lyk? Miskien, ek dink julle weet hoe lyk so 'n braai. It's a massive thing. Where you got this big basket in the middle where you put the stomp in, and when the cows fall out, and you sulke goeders and dan trek, and you must have had about what? 60, 70 little braai areas around this massive braai. We had that done. Later on, we actually had a gymnasium built. That was towards the end of my 6 years. A building that had a gymnasium in it and a squash court, all from the troops' money. I remember the opening of that. We had Mr. South Africa there. That's and Mr. South Africa and our own Roger Tyler used to do that as well. And Andre Reder. And they were there, and that's how we opened the gymnasium. We had the South African Springbok. Those were still Springboks those days, not Proteas. Squash player who came to play against our #1 squash player when we opened that place. And by the way, his name was Andrew Hudson, was our #1 squash player who played cricket for South Africa later on, Andrew Hudson. Hi, Andrew, if you look at it. Yeah, that was fun. That was fun. We could go on with all the stuff that we built. And we had the headquarters. The headquarters was also a cardboard building. We had the headquarters nicely painted. When you walked into the headquarters, we had, from the Anglo-Boer War, we had all the commandos' names on there that fought in the siege of Ladysmith. And all the regiments, the English regiments, we got hold of their plaques, and they were also in the headquarters. Oh, Dave Peddle still ran that project for me. I think we paid something like £20 for all those plaques. Shame, later on, after I left there, the whole headquarters burned down, so that was the end of that part of legacy, but I can remember it very clearly. And there were so many others. The sick bay. The sick bay was built later on before I left, a brand new sick bay. And I've been told, or was told, that when the old headquarters burned down, They actually moved into part of the sick bay, if I'm not mistaken. Then, of course, we had entertainment for the troops down in the Elandsaal. It could take about 700-800 troops, I think, 1,000, can't remember. But we used to have great people coming around there, and the troops used to love that. I remember one year, Ballyhoo. Can you remember Ballyhoo, Koos? Man on the Moon. Remember that? They had just won a musical award for Man on the Moon. And they were on their way from Johannesburg to Durban for a weekend gig. And we found out about that. Somebody told us, and we said, listen, halfway down, come and sleep here at Ladysmith. And on that same stage, that was Ballyhoo, Man on the Moon. It was wonderful. But I saw Afrikaans and English. So we had Nico Karstens was there. Eddie Eckstein, remember Eddie Eckstein of the Bats? They were there. Whoa. And then out at Boshoek, which I'll talk about just now, our training area, we put up a stage, and we had the famous or infamous Joe Parker was also there. Met sy vuil grappe. Die dominee het langs my gesit met daai ding, maar hy het gebloos dat die byle huil. I'm sure all the Durbanites will remember old Joe Parker. And then, of course, we had the Blarney Brothers, that Irish band from Durban. They were also there on 1 or 2 or 3 occasions. So we used to have all those people coming around and trying to make this period of training a little bit more unbearable. So hopefully we had it going. The troops were eating all right. They were sleeping all right, excepting on Friday nights when you sleep on the floor because it's your inspection the next day, but that's how it works. I also did it. I hear one of the troops on one of the Facebook says, I wonder if he knows what it was like to sleep under the bed when I was it. Yeah, I can itself to do, Papa. Anyway, so that was the entertainment. Then we come to training and operations. You must remember, of course, I, as the commander, never commanded my own unit into battle. That's why it eventually became a training unit. But those that we trained, the companies that we trained, went up to the operational area, and there they were dealt in later on to 5 units, 5-1, 5-2, 5-3, 5-4, 5-5. They each had their own operational commander. And then your company would join whichever one was, required your services. And then you do your operations there, your border stint. And that is the training remained our responsibility. Now, a lot of troops are going to remember this. Our training area was out towards Dundee, Wasbank. It was state-owned property called Boshoek. And if you go look at the map of Boshoek, you'll see it's got a high ground on the one side. And that high ground was called KwaSlatikulu, Kwa, place of Slatikulu. I can always remember that because when you used to use live rounds, nou hoor jy hoe slaat jou koels in die berg vas. Dan sien jy gaan daai tracer so in die lug op. KwaSlatikulu. That's how I remember the name. I remember there was a Roman Catholic missionary close to us. We were close to a little village called Wasbank. A lot of troops will remember they used to AWOL from Boshoek at night. Know about it. To go buy slap chips there in Wasbank. You don't get caught, who cares? You get caught, take it like a man. Anyway, but now we had to watch it. Now you got to watch it. Dit het my grys hare gegee. You got to look after the safety of the troops. You're working with live ammo. You can't just do as you please. It's got to be precise, or you lose somebody, or you injure or kill somebody. You're moving while you're firing, fire and movement. If you're attacking a certain objective and your support group is giving you live support, you've got to stop at a certain distance there before your oaks go in, otherwise you're going to kill them. There was degrees and there was... I was only 34 years old, I could handle it. It was hard training. Let's be quite honest about it. Because remember I said in the beginning, ons gaan vir jou harde, eerlike opleiding gee. Which we did. It was about 50 kilometers out, as I say, and I remember after certain advanced training and basic training, whatever you did at Boshoek, you had to walk back, not the whole 50 kilometers, but you had to march back until you got to the tar road and 30, 40 kilometers. And we used to like going, joining the troops to do that, and you march back and you're singing your songs and you're building esprit de corps. And, hey man, it's lekker. Oh, I told the slap chip story already. Then your troops are now getting to self-actualization now. Now they must go and walk the talk. They must go do what they have to do. And they've been trained. They haven't been trained in soft, sweet words of love either. I mean, if we say to a troop, listen, if you are on patrol and you draw enemy fire, you can't decide where there's a nice piece of ground to go and take cover. You hit the deck immediately, unless you do it. So we used to have dash down, crawl, observe, sights, fire, roll, shoot, blah. And then you get it where you say action, and then or dash down, and dan gaan jy maar stadig af, jy weet. Say, sorry pal, let's do it over and over and over again. Because there's no such time as where is there a soft place to hit the deck with. And you can imagine when the corporal or the sergeant, whoever says, take cover, and you take your time, or you don't take your time, he's not going to say to you, ach, kom nou liefie, kom ons try dit weer nie. He gets spoken to in very serious language, man. Because if you don't die, darling, you're going to die there if you don't do it properly. But anyway, ek raak nou 'n bietjie opgedens oor die goeders. Then it's border too. Yes, like that used to be great. Now quickly, yeah, I'm almost halfway through, or just about. In one of these, in Sizwas, I must read you this little piece. I think this was in 1981, 82, 83, I can't remember. A parent, just before the son goes to the border, a parent sends me an anonymous letter. And if he recognizes this letter now, that it's a parent as old as I am, maybe whatever, did you know that I did, because he read this, I'm sure, in Sizwa. So here it is. Dear Commandant Harris, ready to go. Sorry about that. You'll see there's a change in the background there. Battery flat and sulke goeders. But here we go again. I was reading you an anonymous letter that one of the parents sent to me in 81, 82, thereabouts. And it says, Dear Commandant Harris, I would like as a parent with a son in the army to thank you and all the men behind you for making my son an even better son than he was before he went into the army. We have watched him grow in 9 months into a strong, alert and healthy man with a real zest for life. I cannot believe he is the same boy we said goodbye to at the Tel Command 9 months ago. All kinds of thoughts went racing through my mind. Would he make it? Well, he has made it. And I felt a sense of pride in his last letter, telling us that the 9 months of training is nearly over. If all our parents would back their sons and the army instead of finding fault, they would see the army as a fabulous experiment in finding out how well they have done their jobs at bringing up their sons. I've seen boys go into the army on the brink of throwing away their lives. They have come home on passes, different boys. Their bloodshot eyes are now clear. They are alive. We have enjoyed our trips up to Ladysmith, to parades, parents' days, etc. And of course, the Insizwa gets read and reread. Boshoek has given us many a laugh, inspections, PT and the 2,4. Now, the next step is border to, as my son puts it. Great excitement. He can now grow a moustache. What a fabulous way to look at border duty. A moustache is all he is worried about. My son will come home in his 21st year. I know that he will come home safe and sound. And on that day, we'll have a toast to you and Ladysmith. Thank you, Commandant Harris. Best wishes to you and your family from 5SAI parents. Then PS, he says, my name will have to remain an empty space. My son would die of embarrassment. Dan sê ek wil my staflede bedank vir die wyse waarop hulle die afgelope 6 and so on and so on. And my message to them, to the operational area, they're now on their way to go now, is know your work, walk the talk, and never, never, ever relax. En aan die gemeenskap van Ladysmith, baie dankie, that was towards the end of 1981. But I thought I'd share that little letter that the parents sent me. Of course, that was the training and operations. We also, of course, did internal training. We trained clerks, the quartermaster, the sick bay, the supporting services like finances, personnel, and so on. And then, about in my second year, we started a place called the Media Center. I've sent you a photo. You'll see the Media Center there. Hello, we got guys in there with real journalistic expertise, let me tell you. They took photos. They eventually ran this whole Insizwa newspaper as if it was their own. You just left them because you trained them, you can leave them. Just check it every now and again. And that was wonderful to see. Then on the spiritual side, we had voluntary. I remember the two padres, Dominee 5SAI and Dominee Smith, when the troops arrived doing basic training, then you would make it a voluntary. Look, church service was, you will go. I'll slaap jy in die kerk. But this was more a sort of a discussing matters spiritual. And then we would have NG Kerk, with die 3 sister kerke. You'd have a Methodist dominee there from the town. You'd have the father from the Roman Catholics. You would have the rabbi from the Jewish community. And so you went on. And they used to get together there at night on the pavilion with the lights on and coffee when it was getting cold. And you should have seen those days. It was surprising how youngsters of that age were discussing their religions and that. Excuse me, maybe it went about, yo, we're going to the border now. We might not be coming back. Let's get our side spiritually sorted out here. No, I say that in jest. But it was nice seeing kids of that age taking part with their own denominations. And that is what our chaplains did. We also had the Oasis built. You're going to get a photo there of a building that we took and turned it into what we called an oasis, where you could break away from the maddening crowd and go and sit inside there, soft background music. It wasn't necessarily always gospel music, but, you know, it wasn't rock and roll. It was a nice quiet period. There was a coffee maker in there. There was a reading matter in there. There were Bibles in there. And if you really felt, yo, which happens to all of us, can't take this anymore, verlang huis toe. And there and there, you can go sit in the oasis. And I've got a photo in there, you'll see where we're opening the oasis. That was also one of the years, that is in here somewhere, but it's photo number 15, by the way. Then we come to sport. Yo, that was lekker. Look, the Natallas and the Free Staters and everybody, kyk, hulle ken daarom nou vir hulle. Of cheetahs of sharks or Natalians those days. we had many achievements. Because remember, you're sitting in a small area, northern Natal. We've got other army units all around us in Natal Command. Maar hulle gaan ons nou nooit kan kers opsteek met 2000 nasionale dienspligtiges wat sporty is. I mean, we got guys, you don't have Springboks, serving Springboks in any sport necessarily, sitting at 5SAI. All the units will tell you during basic training, when the big sportsmen arrive, they're only there to be say, Harrisley, medical, issue, whoop, Pretoria too. I remember coming into the barber shop. Oh, Gary Helgreen was the barber. He used to have out to help him as well. Number 4, used to cut your hair, number 4. Put that clipper on, up as die hare. Party van het aangekom with hair down to here, but that's beside the point. And I remember walking in there one day, and hier sit 'n blok van 'n man in 'n Gerrie se stoel. En sy hare word gesny. En almal sê vir my, dit is vleisversagie. Never forget that. Maar vleis was nie baie lank daar nie, toe sy op die trein Pretoria toe. Nou generaal Janie Geldenhuys, dit was sy beleid. Which is true, I suppose. Why must vleisversagie play in the Northern Natal Rugby League if you go play Blue Bulls? Jy weet, or whatever it was. Of terug Bloemfontein toe vir die Cheetahs te speel, vir Vrystaat te speel. So that's what he did. And our sport was great. We used to walk the Natal Command sports days. Kom ons begin by rugby. Yo, 'n groot liefde van my. Ek was nooit 'n rugby speel nie, maar I love my rugby. Ons het in die Noord-Natal Liga gespeel. It was Defence, which was us, Wanderers, Houser Park, Vryburg, Eastcore, Newcastle, al die plekke daar om Ladysmith. Played in that league. Yes, it was great. It was great. One year, see that with my huiswerk doen, I can't remember which year. One year towards the end year, we actually played in that league. And we shared the trophy with Eastcore. We remember daai Eastcore man is miners. En die ouens van Vryburg is boere. En so kan jy aangaan. Ons verdediging, weermag altyd, span, en net 6 seniors ingaan. Die rest was allemaal onder 20. Dan gespeel ons teen hierdie ooms. Ons kan nie lekker teen hulle wen in die scrums nie, maar ons hard op sulke cirkels onder hulle, of om hulle. That was wonderful to see. Those wonderful days of preparing the rugby field on a Friday afternoon, met al jou borge se name om die veld, en nou Willem die ou wat, ek gaan nie name noem nie, Willem wat die plek reg maak nie, van die Linde. Sorry Willem. Kry die plek reg, en dan is ons reg vir rugby, en dan kom my ouens. I remember one year, I haven't made a note of that now, but it's coming to my memory now. One year, we played against, I think it was Vryburg, on the B field, because we're having the A fields fixed. En Anton Kritzinger en sy manne, daar's 'n foto van hulle, by the way. You'll see the whole rugby committee there. En nou Anton het vir die manne, en vir Jakes Woodstace was die kaptein, hy het gesê, luister, as hierdie ooms begin heavy raak, dan gaan ek net 99 skree. And 99, I think, was the international sort of a code word for it. Nou slaat jy enige ding wat voorkom. And I remember Jake shouting, 99, en Haasla, hier kom Vryburg se toeskouers ook by. Toe sê Anton Kritzinger vir ons toeskouers ook, 99 omhoog, en daar gaan die rest van die troep op. Boe, die skipfight. Maar niemand is toe daarom dood nie, but it was wonderful. We only had 6 senior players. Wonderful names. Henry Coxwell. Walker was he was a fly-off. Walker was his scrummy. They played for Natal years later, Henry Coxwell. And that's by a name. The teachers we used to get that came from the infantry school. Ek kan nie die name mooi onthou nie, maar ek kan hulle sien. Het op 'n stadium dink ek het ons vir Noord-Natal 11 weermag. Het vir die 15 Noord-Natalers gespeel. That's how proud we were of the rugby. Die ouens het nie van rugby gehou het nie, of die ander sporte het gesê, Harris, he just likes the rugby, he's not doing anything for us. It's not true. It's not true. We did everything for everybody. I just happened to love rugby. Anyway, ek onthou jy gaan sien op my foto, op Lappies Labaskagni, Junior Springbok, 95 games van Natal, eislike blok van 'n man, ook al oorlede. Hy het na die tweede span gekyk, Goebels Kritzinger. Goebels het vir Noord-Natal voor hy gespeel, 'n kaptein vir jare, hy was ons eerste span. Hulle is almal op hy foto. Anyway, en dan voor die man op die rugby hardloop, speel ons Eye of the Tiger. Yes, it was great days. Anyway, soccer was running very well. There's a photo of the soccer there too as well, Mark Chapman and his soccer players. Cricket was wonderful. A little story. I get to Ladysmith. By the way, this is a plastic cup, so it can't be whiskey. If you drink whiskey out of a plastic cup, it's sacrilege. Daar kan jy die groen koeldrank sien jy daar? Cricket. When I get there, the leagues are playing on a Sunday. The Army's policy is no sport on a Sunday, no league sport. So I send a message to Chief of the Army saying, can we get permission to play cricket on a Sunday? And Generaal Geldenhuys, Jannie Geldenhuys was die hoof van die leer, and in his typical way, he actually phoned me. En hy sê vir my, luister, ken jy nie die geskiedenis van daai Ladysmith? Hy sê vir hom, nie generaal nie, hy sê, het jy geweet, and it's true by the way, during the siege of Ladysmith, het generaal Joubert, die boeregeneraal, hy was baie sieklik, want hy het van sy perd afgeval, net voor die beleg van Ladysmith. Maar hy het op 'n Sondagoggend gesit op Platrand, lekker in die Sondag sonnetjie. Toe kom daar 'n wag aangegaan en toe sê generaal, ons kyk hier in Ladysmith en daar op die Oval speel die Engelse cricket. En die generaal het gesê, ek aanvaar jou woord daarvoor. Lie. Jy was nie geskiet op 'n Sondag. Toe sê hy blykbaar vir die kanonne, lie. Gee 'n paar waarskuwingsskote. Stel dit in die history books. En daar skiet die boere op die Engelse. And one of the writers still wrote there, and all you saw was bales, balls, boxes, and Englishmen running in all directions. Dan sê die generaal vir my, en nou wil jy cricket op 'n Sondag speel? Anyway, he allowed it, and we played cricket on a Sunday as well. There were very many more. Right, ons het Jukskei in Noord-Natal gewen. Ou Wiek Victor en sy vrou Nanette. It was wonderful, but it's too many. Koos, I'm coming to the end, believe it or not. There's a couple of other highlights that I'd like to underline. 5SAI and the rest, as you know, started in 1962. So in 1983, the unit turned 21. Was het mondig geword. En ek dink dit was Dominee van Sail en Giel van Aarde en daai manne wat die projekleiers was om die geskiedenis van 5SAI in 'n brosjure te sit. Ek het vir jou 'n foto gestuur van 'n brosjure en 50 van hulle het ook 'n heerlike of 'n mooi leeromslag gehad. And believe it or not, mine got damaged when a geyser blew up somewhere years ago. So that's a worthwhile and I think a very sought after and a rare piece of literature. The first 21 years of 5SAI, all in a brochure, photos, stories. It's in that brochure. You'll see it on the photos. Then I remember the stable belts came out here in the early 80s, where all the units, not only infantry, you had your own stable belt. And we designed our stable belt. It's the only infantry unit that's got the infantry bokkop on it. And we actually designed that one. We're very proud of that. You wore with your infantry belt. And we had another idea. I think I've got photos that I sent you of the cloth badge. We decided, listen, why do we have a cloth badge? And you'll see some of the I think I sent 2 prototype photos to you, where it shows you what that cloth badge looked like and so on. We were very proud of that. Then, of course, the Saracens eventually came to 5SAI. It was a very successful vehicle. I was part of that whole project from the beginning. They took the old Saracens in Grahamstown and in other places, and they had them fixed and refurbished. Rolls-Royce engine, I'll have you know. Beautiful vehicle. But its petrol consumption was way out. So the Saracen never really became a big factor in the army. But all those that came out, eventually 80, 90 of them, landed up in 5SAI towards the end of my period and into 87, 88. And I think I've sent you a photo there of Obas. Obas is the first Saracen that came to 5SAI. And then, of course, the oaks like the guy I mentioned now, Willem and Pagel Badenhorst and those guys, they were looking after. We used to ride the Saracens to keep them going and so on. Also great fun. Then the new sick bay came along. I remember Wally Judd of Judd's Construction. He built the sick bay, the Englishman. And you know what it goes when you get to a certain height of a building, when the rafters go on. That is it, boss. Dak, nutmark. Then you have a little bit of a story or something, you drink a toast to the building that's just got to get its roof. And when we arrived for that little function, Wally had got a Union Jack flying up there. And we looked at this lot and we said, what's a Union Jack hier so binne? So we got hold of Hannes van der Linde. He was our assault pioneer instructor. He says from Hannes, daai vlag staan na bo, 5:00 vanmiddag, gaan ons hierdie plek nou, jy weet, inhuldig voor ons die dak opsit, maar gemaak 'n plan met daai vlag asseblief. And now Hannes is gone and he gets himself some P4 explosives. He packs it all around the flag so you can't see it. And daar staan ons en die en the toast and congratulations, Judd's Construction, well done. And ladies and gentlemen, I present to you our new sick bay. Gaan daai Union Jack al brandende in die veld in. But that was the end of that. It was a very boereoorlog van vooraf. Anyway. Then, nearly finished. The 5SAI song came out. Baie mense sê dit klink soos Karinkie, jy weet. Karinkie, 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 dee. But anyway, it was written by famous people. It's got beautiful words to it. I have got a copy of it. I might send you. If anybody wants a copy of the song, I have got it here. So it's got a lot of members have also still got it. And then to start winding up, I must have had about 80 plus Zulu workers. And the loyalty that those Zulu workers gave to the unit was just unbelievable. They were so proud to be part of a 5SAI. They all wore brown overalls and so on, but they worked in different places. They weren't soldiers, obviously, but they were very proud of them. And I'd like to salute them too and say thank you for your contribution. All their loyalty. Hier's die laaste bladsy. Hoeveel minute is dit, Koos?
Ek dink ons is bietjie meer as 'n uur besig hier, generaal, miskien 'n uur en 15 minute. So
Okay,
ons
dan
het
sit
nog
dit
so 'n
ook.
uur voor die Eskom afgaan.
Dan sê voor die dinges kom, ja. I remember in 81, 82, I think it was 81, we had Ops Protea in the operational area. And there we lost 3 troops. David Jansen van Rensburg, Etienne Snyman, and Gavin Elliott. And I've also sent you a copy of the Roll of Honor of all those that served in 5SAI, national servicemen and others, that paid the ultimate price. And I want to say to all of them, rest in peace, my friends. And as we say in the moths, at the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember you. Then, just before I end, they tell me I want to send a photo of that, but it's still given gat. Where Brigadier Anderson is presenting me with the Southern Cross Medal. I can't remember what the citation is. Goeie diens gelewer and well done, that you wear. It's the highest medal, not a decoration, it's a medal that an officer wears. And excuse the old cliche, but that was given to me for my services at 5SAI. And the cliche is, and I'm going to say it with all honesty and with all humbleness, I'm wearing that until the day I go home with pride, and it's you guys that gave it to me. So thank you for the memories. Till I see you next time, Koos. To all of you at 5SAI, I salute you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I have a few questions if you don't mind. The first one is, as a commander, sir, how do you feel when the paratroopers and special forces and God knows who else comes there to poach your best men? I know you can't stop them, but does it bother you right in the beginning when they arrive to recruit?
Yeah, it's funny you ask that question, because I could have said it here too. That used to be we used to try and hide them away. The rugby players, those that the infantry school, Chris Serfontein, that was then at the school. Him and I, when I was at 5SAI, Chris Serfontein, General Serfontein, Swarthand, he came up personally to 5SAI in my first year or second year to come and choose troops for junior leader. And you couldn't say no to them. Ja, that was with the swaar hart, jong. Yeah, our oaks that we training as section leaders, you could see these guys have got leadership qualities. And then the infantry school comes along and they vat hulle weg. But you can't say no to them, because it goes about the bigger picture. If I was to jump out of a serviceable aeroplane, like the paratroopers do, go. It's a pity, really, because, you know, those oaks with that type of aim in life make very good soldiers. They've got to go. The sportsmen have got to go. Yeah, so it wasn't easy. It's a good question you asked me, because I remember that frustration every year.
Now I have to ask you, sir, was any type of physical violence, like hitting a soldier by a superior, whether it be a lance corporal or a captain, was that ever allowed, or policy at least?
Never. Never. Do you know that it was so bad? It's like in teaching now. I mean, also op school het jy pak slaag gekry. If I have to do this to a learner, jy moet hierdie ore oopmaak. That is assault. Go back to your question. It's obvious you lift your hand in anger to anybody. You are legally obliged. You know, you can aangekla word. And it did happen. It happened often. If you, you know, even verbally abused. Jy weet mos soos party ouens, jy weet, climb into your family, that sort of stuff. Nee. Ons het, you get court-martialed for that, by the way. For assault, you get court-martialed, and you could be dishonorably discharged out of the army. To answer your question.
I've heard somewhere, sir, that should the man end up in the detention barracks with DB for some reason, that time he spends in detention is not actually counted on his 2 years of national service. He has to sort of repeat it. Is that true?
Of course, you're taking me back 40 years now. I can't remember that, but I think that it's ringing a bell. It's ringing a bell. I mean, he's now taking the army's time. It sounds as if it is yes, the answer, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I've heard about that, so I think it might be true, but people can come and tell us here. I just spoke yesterday to somebody who was actually at 5SAI, to be honest. He then became a paratrooper in 1974, and then he said he ended up in DB because he sort of abled away. Very funny guy. It was a big joke to him. Wasn't serious, wasn't running away from a battle. He was just fed up, and some long story. So I think they did probably repeat that. But now I have a question. Once your units are leaving for the border and they are up at the border as 5-1, 5-2, do you still have contact with these people, even if they are underneath command of somebody else?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. We used to visit every single company. Every, it doesn't matter in which of those 5-1 to 5-5 units they were. Myself, the RSM, Germany, adjutant, into airplane, go up, go all around wherever our troops are, and visit them. Took them things worth, brought things back, communicated with their parents through this Insizwa, telling them, that it's okay with Yanni, Mani Warini, he sends his glove and blah, blah, and so on. Oh, yes, no, we used to visit them, for sure. And then they used to have that pride when you got there, You just come now from the States with your wit gezichtjie. Look what I look like. I've been fighting in the sun. Very proud of themselves.
And then there's a question, and it's the second last one I actually have. How did the Army's language policy work? Because many of the military people tells me that they had to learn to speak Afrikaans very, very quickly. Was it like 1 month English, 1 month Afrikaans, or just Afrikaans and that's it?
Look, the Army's policy was, when you're talking about communication, specifically outside, if 5SAI has to write a letter to one of the departments in Army headquarters, January is Engels, February is Afrikaans, so gaan die aan. Ander word die Afrikaanse ou, as hy by Januarie kom, dan los hy die brief tot dit weer, Maart is dit in Afrikaans geskryf. And of course, in training, you had to give both languages, otherwise the oaks not can understand what you say. Like that old story of the corporal, who says, doing map reading. So you must remember, a circle has got 180 degrees. And the English troop says to him, excuse me, corporal, does it have 360 degrees? You came a story. They say, don't get wise ass with me, troop. This are a small circle. Only 180.
I'm really laughing now. Yeah, I've heard about that one. So, last question, perhaps the most difficult one. So, for which rugby team would you support now, since you're in Port Elizabeth?
No, I've always, look, I PE is Eastern Cape, or Eastern Province. Up until when I was up to matric, it was Eastern Province, because then we still had Domkrag, we still had, wie was die Springbok slot, Gawie Karelse. And then, of course, there's not much money in Port Elizabeth. So when they became good, they went to play for the other provinces. And because I am south of the Vaal River, I've been a stormer. Luister hoe boel hulle. I've been a stormer for as long as I can remember, and I will die a stormer. Kyk bietjie daar, kyk bietjie die foto's daar van Tafelberg. Gaan kyk nou daar. You'll see this latest trophy we won. It's still up there. It was wakker met 'n kabel vas. Die ek is 'n stormer. Oh, sorry. Genuinely, my second favorite has always been Natal because of those 6 years. The Sharks is my second team.
Well, you know, so it's not that I can take sides here, but I can tell you that we're on the side of anything and everything which is against North Transvaal in the global. And that's how I will summarize my neutrality here. So for the rest of you, we don't really care what rugby team you support. Thank you, sir. We really appreciate this time of you at 5SAI. I think you were a very popular officer and commander, actually. I can see it from all the different views and comments which is coming out. It's impressive. It's impressive after all these years when people say we will serve with you against any time. It's impressive. And I want to ask everybody of you, yeah, leave your comments, keep it civil. If you have a story, please come and tell me. You're welcome here. Let us get this legacy thing going. No one else is going to listen to us, so we need to listen to ourselves, I suppose. And until we meet again, God bless.